Hello, my friends, and welcome to episode 201. I think I'm going to actually start saying the episode name now. Oh, and already we're getting internet fuck ups. Damn it! Sorry, my language, but already the internet's not happy. Like right out the gate. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Space Game Junkie podcast. I, as always, am your complaining co host, Brian. And joining me, as always, is your not so complaining co host, Jim. Much cooler cucumber than I am.
Oh, did you say elite? What?
Oh no! Oh no!
No.
Oh, what? Oh, sorry. Triggered.
No.
There was a small patch. For that
Warrior.
today. There was a small patch for that today. Also joining us is your co-host Hunter.
What up, everybody?
Also joining us is guest co-host, friend of the show, chief of security.
A little of everything at this point.
Little of everything, a pinch of this, sousson of that. Spaz.
Hello.
And also joining us from Strasbourg. Is that in France?
Technically, it's in France.
Because you said EU, and I'm like, that's not a country. I don't know a lot about geography, but I know that isn't a country. So I looked it up, and it looked like it was like in France, but like near Spain a little bit.
No.
No?
Germany.
Germany. Yeah. My brain. Woo, it's gone
Basically,
today.
we have switched sides about every 50 years. We were French, then German, then French, then German. That's why we have a strong European identity.
That's pretty awesome, actually. Well, welcome to the show. Oh God, Rogelio. You said there's also a Spanish and a French. You said there's a Spanish and a French way to say it. Martinez. That's easier to say. This topic was. I'm gonna call you Raj. This topic was Raj's idea. Because you're working on an as of yet unnamed space fighter game, and you were like, you guys should talk about the mechanics of the two still best games in this category, TIE Fighter and Freespace 2. I'm like, yeah, I could talk about those games all day, and all night, and all day again. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. On the stream, we have an entry of Freespace 2 playing. Now I have said many times that Freespace 2 I still feel is the pinnacle of space dogfighting. It really is. Even oh my God, what is it? 18 years.
It's more now.
Oh God, 18 years. Oh God. It came out almost 18 years ago, you guys.
Yep.
Oh. Okay.
Nothing like a good old podcast to sober you up and make you feel old.
All right. 1999.
Take the onion off your belt, my friend.
Yeah, but then TIE Fire, the other king of the hill,
Hell yeah.
is 23 years old at this point. Just about. Yeah, that came out
Was
in
94, if I remember
Yeah,
right.
July of 94, I believe, is when that one came out. So yeah, it's been roughly about 2-ish decades for both games, give or take. And yeah, I mean, there have been other, now we're not talking about, dogfighting games with realistic physics like iWar or Terminus. Those are great in their own way, but that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about the kind of dogfighting that Star Wars made popular, which is commonly known as World War II in space.
It's the old yank and bank.
Yeah, pretty much yank and bank.
But some games fly like a desk, and some games fly like an airplane.
Yeah, we're not gonna talk about the
Well, no, but there's okay. So you have the elite thing, where very much like an airplane, left and right will roll you.
Yeah.
Right. And then you pull back on the stick to bring the nose up. Okay. And then,
sure.
But for so many years, we played space games where it was different. It was the X-Wing and Wing Commander model. of, left and right. You actually, that yaws the ship, and then the nose up and down. So it's more like you're using the stick to aim the crosshair. And those are the games that are actually much, much better with a mouse.
That's fair.
They lend themselves better to that. Because if you try to fly Elite with a mouse, I can't really do it.
I can't do it either.
There are people who are masters of that stuff. Like whenever I go into the arena and fight people, the guy that whips my ass will always be a mouse and keyboard guy. But still,
Yeah.
Same deal in War Thunder too.
Oh, really? I know a couple. I know at least one or two guys, and one of the reasons I got this because I saw them doing it. They use a Microsoft Strategic Commander. Remember that thing? The kind of mouse-looking thing. Yeah, I bought one. I bought one because these guys were using it for like the lateral thrust and whatnot, and using the mouse to like for pitch and yaw and all that. And so,
another thing that you can do that's the same deal, it just doesn't have buttons on it, is the Space Mouse, which is like $99. You can buy them stupidly expensive, but the entry is like $99.
I've never. What is this thing?
It's the Space Mouse, and it looks like it's like a metal base that sits on your desk and like a knob that made out of rubber, and it's kind of hourglass shaped so you can grip it and you can push it up and down and then move it and twist it. So it's more meant for people that are doing like 3D CAD work.
This is totally what they use in the. This is totally what they use in the Expanse for the Rocinante. Yes. This is totally what they use for that.
It's exactly the prop.
Yeah, I'm looking right at it. I'm like, oh my god, that's what Alex uses to fly the Rocinante. Like, and that makes so much sense.
Which is pretty fair because it is actually something made to move in 3 direction.
Oh yeah, no, it looks kind of awesome. Like I kind of want one, but I think for a while we like weren't until X-Wing, I guess. We were used to the kind of elite / wing commander kind of flight models. But then X-Wing, I think X-Wing really improved upon what we had already played with the wing commander games because it just felt better. Like it felt like you like you said, you felt
intuitive would be the word.
Yeah, it felt a lot more intuitive. That's a good word for it. You felt like in Wing Commander, you basically felt like you were moving kind of a desk across a room, like it felt really wooden.
Well, the reason why is because in TIE Fighter and X-Wing, they introduce a little bit of roll in with the yaw. So you're still yawing, but it also rolls, and it gives you a completely different feeling about it.
Right.
I'm calling that the 3D car, actually. It is like driving a car, but you have a third freedom axis.
Oh, I can see that.
Because when you are turning, it tilts you because it's a suspension that is working. This is what makes it intuitive because you are used to drive cars, and it makes it feel way more intuitive than a plane. No one I guess that nobody between us has ever flown a plane, but we all driven a car, and this feeling, I think it is part of the key.
No, I think you're right. So, there is an intuitive, like you're like, I'm sorry, just 1 second. Like you're leaning into the turn. It's kind of like it's kind of making you feel like you're leaning into the turn with your body, and it's kind of simulating that. And you're probably right. That's why it feels so much more intuitive in TIE Fighter and Freespace than it does in any of the Wing Commander games, really. Sorry, what were you going to say?
You just reminded me of the Star Car from last Starfighter. It's just like, somebody needs to put that thing in a game.
I still want one. I still want a Star Car.
Put it in Grand Theft Auto.
Oh, yeah, that would work. But, well, then you'd have to wait for the space expansion.
No, you just like make it fly,
Make it fly.
Oh, okay.
I'd be fine with that. I would so play GTA today, right now, if they had a Star Car. And folks, if you don't know what we're talking about, why are you listening to this podcast? Seriously, go watch the last.
Or you could just like mod it into like freelancer or
You know what?
We got
There's
some devs we can talk to and just
there's-
say, hey, put the star car in.
There's so many other ships in mod for Freelancer. Like I played Serenity a while back, which was weird because it had guns, you know. So that was kind of like stupid rednecks don't even know a transport don't got guns on it. So that was weird, but kind of fun. Like, ooh, I'm flying around Serenity. So I wouldn't be surprised if someone made a star car. I think I did
Yeah,
play
speaking of Serenity,
a gun.
where the hell is that game?
It's never
It's
happening.
been
It's never.
No?
Oh, you mean
no.
the MMO?
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
from
there's an MMO.
Sparkplug.
It died. It's dead. It's. We haven't heard anything in what 3 years.
Yeah, they were doing all their stuff on Mech Runner, and I don't think Mech Runner really did all that great. But I haven't heard nothing, and they're
Oh.
here, they're in
Ooh.
town.
Wow, I just Googled Firefly MMO and Firefly Online, keepflying.com. I get a privacy error when I try to go to that webpage.
Oh no.
That's
Probably
bad.
could be certificates out of, but it looks like they weren't updated for like almost 2 years.
Yeah,
That's never a good sign.
I think the last time we heard from them was maybe 2 or 3 years ago. We haven't heard from
Yeah,
them.
well
in-
here's
in
yeah
a
here's their
while.
subreddit. You go to their subreddit and the last post. Jesus. Okay, well.
What?
I guess people are asking like, why is Firefly Online gone dark? Like, no one's really saying anything.
There is talk of a gag order or something like that.
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised. Oh man, that sucks. I mean, that'd be
Yeah, their last post on Facebook was April of 2016.
oof. That
Apparently,
recently.
they've been given a gag order. Like, they really have.
Oh my god.
They
yeah.
last post they were like, we're not allowed to say anything, and then they're done.
Oh, well, I guess it is dead. Oh well. I mean, there was one company that was going to do one back in like 2006, and that never happened. So I didn't have much hope for this one either. You know, cuz it's such a weird license. Like Universal has some of it and Fox has some of it. You know, it's such a weird.
Oh yeah, no, it's the rumor is it's a gag order from Fox.
Oh, you mean like
Fox
Fox
killed
is-
it, basically.
Fox is killing it because like they didn't have permission from Fox; they had it from somebody else. Right?
I don't know that, but I know that
Oh boy.
Yeah, it's
apparently Fox stole it.
probably holding it hostage for money. Oh well.
Sounds like Fox.
Axinar.
If Fox wanted money from this license, they know what they should do.
Animated series.
Any series. Any series. You could create any content in the Firefly universe and it would sold like cupcakes.
Probably.
This is true.
I'd watch Firefly The Next Generation. Absolutely. Or Firefly 2000. No, that doesn't work.
Firefly universe.
Firefly.
Firefly Atlantis.
Or Firefly Effect.
Uh,
Like a Mass Effect, but with
Oh.
Firefly. I'd
Oh.
do that.
I thought you were talking Butterfly Effect.
No. What? Why? What?
I don't
No.
know. Fly Effect. But anyway.
Mass Serenity.
Oh, yeah. I just got the fly effect joke.
It wasn't much of one. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you're right. Is that one of the ways that, like, especially TIE Fighter and Freespace feel more intuitive is you definitely feel more connected with your craft than you do in, like, Wing Commander. Probably because of that intuitive slight roll where you feel like your body's into it, like you guys just talked about. And I think it's not just rolling and turning, but it's also like moving forward. Like in some games, your craft feels so slow, or it feels like it takes forever to get anywhere, or you never feel just fast enough. But here, like you're never, even when you're in a bomber, it never takes too long to get to where you need to go. You know, and you could always put some power to engines to speed you up if you really need to move faster. So it's I think forward movement is also another key ingredient here because it doesn't take too long to get to your next target. So it keeps the action moving rather than like this downtime where you're like, oh, Oh.
Go to the next waypoint. Go to the next waypoint. Nothing's there. Go to the next waypoint.
Yeah.
Nothing's there.
Nothing. Thanks. That's great. Yeah, I guess that's true. These games don't have that sort of thing. Like that's a good point. Every mission is self-contained. Like there's no go to waypoint A, go to waypoint B, blah, blah, blah. Check. Here's the mission area. Go. Do your goddamn thing. So I guess in terms of movement, there's also the movement of not making you wait for the action.
The action comes to you, actually.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. Like, you're like, oh, I'm just going to escort this convoy. Nothing's going to happen. Oh, God.
Well, if you remember the days of playing like World War II flight sims, right? You had a skip time button for a reason, because you might fly an hour before you actually got to the mission area.
Yeah.
Right. Because you know, you gotta like fly over the English Channel and deep into Germany, that kind of thing. But in a space game, generally, Wing Commander did it with nav points, right? Where it's just like, all right, there's no hostiles around, you know, hit A to autopilot and jump you right to the next action. With Star Wars, didn't so much do that, but it was always like you undocked from the ship or you hyperspaced in and it just dropped you like within a couple kilometers of what was going to go on. But the other thing about all these games, though, that works very well with that is because they are mostly narrative driven things. You know, there's a story and you're going through a series of missions and that. So it's kind of like I play those things for the story just as much as the flying, because it's like I want to see what happens. You know, it's like Freelancer or not Freelancer, Freespace too.
Yeah.
You know, that had a very interesting story. So that's a thing that I think the new games that are coming out, it's like even if they do a fairly competent space flight experience, they're missing the narrative. So it just feels like something ain't there. So which you know, not to pick on Elite, but Elite has zero narrative, and that's just why I don't.
But they just found a generation ship, and it's all
whatever.
spooky.
Whatever.
It's all spooky or
just-
something.
No,
And-
just
2 weeks ago,
no.
Space Pumpkins. They had pumpkins 2 weeks ago. That was the giant.
Yeah, I mean,
segment.
what's the narrative?
So-
Exploration like that?
Were they
That's
Well, there is a
guess.
narrative on the background, but
Yeah, but it's too background. That's the thing.
but it's like it's literally like people in a restaurant talking behind you, background. Like we're in a
Yeah.
restaurant, clearly, but what do we do here?
Well, all they need
Well, you can
is
eat.
like you dock, right, and it would just be like, hey, there's an actual storyline that's here, this NPC, and if you talk to them, you're going to get a string of missions that actually has a story. It's not just going to be like, well, we're going to string together some random missions and then call that a quest. But actually, like, there should be a little narrative, and they can just do bite-sized little stories, man, like 3-4 missions long, and you're done. But
like even
but
in
it told
Eve,
you
they have
something.
missions. Eve's got boatloads of missions in their
Well, that's-
narrative.
Yeah, well, that's why I keep saying, like, the game is too big for to put content, you know, in an appreciable way for the developers to do it. If they would outsource that to the community, it would be glorious, because, you know, hey, we got Veloxi's Vixens and whatever system that is, and we could write storyline.
Yeah, that would be
missions,
really cool.
right? Yeah, and then it would be a thing of like, oh, go to this guy's system because their mission that they just put up is really cool. So then you would have people touring around to take the cool missions. And, you know, it's like, come on, man, let's just do it. Just do it. That's just me.
No, I mean, we were kind of asked not to talk about narrative, but no, I mean that does make sense. Like, you want a good way to string. You don't want just a bunch of random missions. You want like a larger purpose. And
let's just say that the issue is that narrative is a job in itself that is different from the mechanics of the game.
Yeah,
That's
well,
why
I agree.
it is obvious that the greatness of the game could not have been without a good story. But the point that I am trying to find is what in the mechanics made them good. Because there has been other space games that had pretty good stories in
Sure.
the last 10 years,
Yeah.
but that were subpar because they were either flying desk or something else completely that was not as
Right.
enjoyable as X-Wing
Well,
and
Right. Like when you talk
Freespace.
about
I would say
sorry, go ahead, Hunter.
I was gonna say I would say that what's interesting, the complete reverse of that, what had great combat, but maybe subpar narrative, especially for Brian and Jim, would be like X-Wing Alliance. X-Wing Alliance had great combat, in
It
my
re-
opinion.
that's true. It did. It did. Had a really nice engine.
And it had a really nice engine that was able to be supported by the mod community for years, that made it look better, that threw in new scenarios and all kinds of stuff. Unfortunately, though, again, that was at like a time where those types of games were kind of dead. So it was really only supported by a small community afterwards. But if you want to talk about,
well, look at X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, a game that released with no campaign, right? But the missions had like some substance there. It was like, you're here to do a thing. This is your goal, right? And then there's opposition, right? So it's like, we're going to loot that star base over there. We're gonna capture that ship, or we're gonna do, it's a thing, rather than just
shuttle.
So it wasn't all just straight combat, right? Because that's when that game gets boring as hell, is whenever you go into the mission generator thing and you just like say, all right, well, I'm gonna stick 10. Yeah, I'm gonna just stick 10 TIE fighters out here in an asteroid field. Okay, it's the exact same combat experience, right? But it just has no feel to it, because there's I don't need
so
a
I think what you're getting
story.
at is objective based combat.
Yes, yeah, you need
Right.
need a purpose for doing what you're doing.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I'd actually really get behind that. And I think one thing that also fails with, again, sorry to beat the dead horse here, but Elite Dangerous, with the Arena Commander, for example, the Arena Commander is fun, but again, you're so limited in what you can do in the Arena Commander. It's just like capture the flag or melee or team like deathmatch. It really, like, you're limited to just like what Jim said. It's like 10 TIE fighters versus 10 X-Wings.
Yeah, you know what would have made that so better is if they'd have had an announcer.
Well, maybe
like a John Madden game, where or hell, League of Legends,
like an air horn, like.
Yeah, exactly. Because it would be fun then, right? It's
even if they integrated the arena in the main game, that would be even better.
Well, partially because I mean, if it was objective-based Arena Commander, like let's say it's you're defending this, and the other team is trying to take that down, or point capture or area control or territory control or something,
or
not
assassination,
King of the Hell, or something where it's just like you have this important thing over here that you have to defend it. And then the other team, their sole objective is to do whatever it takes to take that out. To me, that is more than just trying to get the most kills in a round and then you win, or a few points for capture the flag and you win. Like any multiplayer game can have capture the flag. That to me gets boring after about 2 rounds. Like, I'm done.
That's a lesson that for me Overwatch made plenty clear. You don't need kill death ratio to have a good multiplayer experience.
Right.
You have many other metrics, even better when they are specialized for your class, that can show your actual skill in the game, and not just how many people you killed, how many times you were killed. Because if you are the tank, obviously you will die more often, and so different class has different metrics to appreciate the skill of the player.
Yeah, one of the things in Overwatch that made a dramatic difference is that whole play of the game feature that they've got in there, because it celebrates one amazing thing that happened. And because maybe odds are you didn't see it, but it's great to highlight that thing. And because it's like, well, play a couple of games. Even if I'm not the best player here, I could be just terrible. I get a lucky shot. Oh my God, I got featured in the, the instant replay. That's amazing.
And that's something that you can easily share on the social networks.
Oh yeah.
And that fuels your community. And for a multiplayer game, that's like the bread of the butter.
Yeah, that's why that car soccer game does so well. Whatever that
Rocket
thing's
League.
called.
Rocket
Yeah,
League.
Rocket League. That's why Rocket League does so well. Is exactly because of that. Because I've seen so many people like share their winning goal in Rocket League or something like that. They talk about it a lot.
Well, because it's a physics sandbox, and like crazy dumb things happen, and it's like sometimes blind luck can look like amazing skill. That's all I'm saying, because I've done some stuff in that game that I had no idea how I did, and it just happened. And it was like, oh, that looked really good.
I meant to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so the separation, because a Starfighter game is the closest analogy to a Starfighter game is, of course, an airplane game. So what changes between the Starfighter and the airplane, other than the lasers go pew pew?
You have no
space, which is different scenery.
I was about to say, but with the space comes no altitude to monitor.
Right. So in an airplane, you have I'll take it even beyond the altitude. In space games, you have energy, but it's allocation to shields and engines and weapons.
Yeah.
Right?
No.
Some,
But the
not
good
all.
ones do. So
Well, I guess like the X-wing games, sure.
And
X-Wing
Freespace too.
and Wing
Freespace.
Commander and every game that I can think of, Elite. I can't name a space game that doesn't have energy allocation. It's the triangle, right? It's the energy to
I
weapons,
unfortunately
shields.
can name one.
Yeah, and well, look, Star Trek, right? That's the
No,
basis.
Valkyrie.
Oh, what, an Eve Valkyrie?
In a Valkyrie, there is no energy management. That's one of its main.
Yeah, but that actually makes sense for what they're trying to accomplish with that.
No, not really. But
No,
maybe we will get into this later. I just want you to finish your point on energy management first.
Okay. So the thing with the airplanes is you have a different kind of energy management because it's potential energy, which is brought about by altitude and gravity. So in space, you don't have a lot of gravity. Well, you do, but they don't model it. But it would be a thing of it doesn't matter, as far as the orientation of my ship versus the ground. So in an airplane, if I point the nose straight up, that becomes an energy fight. And I have to consider what my opponent's ship or airplane is capable of, and what my velocity is, and how quickly I'm going to bleed speed versus him. And when you get altitude, then it's like energy in the bank, right? You're going slow, but now you have the potential to lose altitude, gain speed, but you're putting energy actively into the aircraft, but you're removing the energy from your battery, which was your altitude. In a space game, you don't have any of that. So they make it interesting which is good, right? Because some people don't want to deal with that. And the vast majority of new player deaths in a flight sim is between the player and the ground and has nothing to do with enemy bullets. So in a space game, you don't have to worry about that stuff. You might hit an asteroid or something, but that's a different problem, right?
Or another fighter, or
Yeah, but it's a trade, right? You take one thing where you simplify reality, and then you put your complexity somewhere more interesting, or less mundane, right? Because and potentially less frustrating, because it's like, oh, there was an asteroid there, I hit it. That's different than I was pulling too hard on the stick and I didn't realize I was going too slow, and then I stalled the wing and spun, and I couldn't recover the spin and crater. That's a thing that you just don't deal with in a space sim like that. And it very rarely does a maneuver actually result in something unfortunate that you can't recover from, right? So I would like to see in a space game where you fly, and it does fly like an X-wing. You know, it's an airplane kind of thing. But if you get damaged, or let's say you just overdo it, because you know you can only take so many G's, right? You could black out in a space game. You very rarely see that. But some sort of like G-force thing would be interesting. But it's also a thing of like in Elite, right? You have compensators that tries to make it fly like an airplane, and it limits your performance to what it can do as far as like what your thruster's energy is about turning your heading to make it so that your ship is always going generally right where the nose is pointed. So it limits what you can do. Well, if you fired the rockets harder than what the ship could actually, you know, adjust to point the nose, then you would have like a power slide, right? So you're getting a Newtonian element in there, but it's not a Newtonian element where, you know, you're just cartwheeling through space trying to figure out how to stop, right?
Well,
It
what I
kind of
would like
comes
to,
back. It kind of comes back to my car analogy.
well, what I would like to see is something like a Viper Battlestar Galactica thing.
Yes, that uh that
Diaspora.
game. Diaspora, thank you.
Yeah, the free space mode.
Diaspora, I feel, is the best flight model that I've ever seen in a starfighter game, because it's space enough that you can get the thing loose, right? You can do things where it's in the Wing Commander games. Yeah, you could hold a button down and then freely rotate the ship like a
Ooh, I
turret.
could
You
strafe a
maintain
little bit.
velocity.
Yay!
Yeah, a little bit. But it wasn't a thing like every turn you had to think about, oh, I'm going to swing wide on this because, you know, I'm going faster than what my ship's going to actually adjust. So you have a semi-Newtonian thing because it's a little bit sloppy. But I like that feel.
And you know what it fixes too? It fixes the issue that the fights turn into a circle fight. Because then the skill that the pilot has to pull to keep the same turning rate makes that the one who is better at turning at power sliding gets to win in the dogfight.
Yeah, you know what game did that amazingly was Allegiance, the old Microsoft multiplayer game. It did that Battlestar Galactica like sliding around, yet generally in control of your ship. It did it wonderfully, and it ended up. You had some circle strafing, but it was actually more like side strafe. You know, where you would use horizontal thrust and try to keep the nose on people. And I see that happens a lot in Star Citizen when people are playing Arena Commander. That seems to be the deal there too, right? Is it's like you're trying to use your lateral and vertical thrust to dodge incoming shots, but you can keep the nose on the guy. But so then it kind of turns into a circle fight like that, but it's because people aren't really using their main engines to go forward. It just turns into a maneuvering thrusters duel at that point. Elite got away from that because I was asking them like, well, why is it that whenever I'm, at 50% throttle, that's when I get the fastest angle of deflection on the nose. But you would think that if I'm sitting at 0, I would have the fastest deflection because then it doesn't have to compensate for course correction, right? So it would allow me to just spin. And so what they told me was, well, we tried that originally, and then everybody just played like a turret in space, and they didn't bother flying. They would just point the ship and shoot and let things come to them. And I was like, yeah, okay, I see. So they had to do it to make it fun. Otherwise, it would just be a static thing.
That's the main trap into what some games fall into.
I think X-Wing versus TIE Fighter did a pretty good job with matching speed with turning rate.
Because the slower you went, the better you turned.
Right, but you never wanted to
slower
stop
you
in
went.
that game.
X-Wing Alliance did it too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
the slower you went, the better you turn, but the slower you go, the easier target you are.
Exactly. You never wanted to actually stop. So
It
I
became
think
a sitting duck.
yeah, exactly. So I think it really worked because you actually had to manage your speed and turn on an active basis. So Why tie it? That I think that's another reason X-Wing versus TIE Fighter kind of got slammed when it first came out, is because people were expecting that TIE Fighter, that purely TIE Fighter model, and they tried to enhance on it a bit, and they didn't really tell anybody.
I prefer it. It made because I had a Thrustmaster set up, and I had no reason to use my throttle until that, and then it was like, oh, okay, awesome, I got a throttle, so Hodass wins.
It's actually weird using a throttle with those games, because like it's not smooth. Like for Alliance it is, but for XVT it's like they do it in those increments, you know?
Yeah. So what I did is I
weird.
programmed the increments into the throttle.
Oh,
so
that's right.
It would actually trigger
that-
key presses
with
at
that
certain
DOS
points.
based GUI that they let you they had back then. Yeah. Oh man, I remember.
I
that
may be
crap.
confusing, but I think there was also another method, was to set the ship to go full throttle all the time and only use the brake. You had a better control if you went from full throttle and use the brake to slow down a little bit.
If those games did that, I never used it because I didn't even think of
So
that.
so you're saying go full throttle, and then when you want to turn, just pull the throttle all the way in, turn, and then jam it forward again.
Exactly.
Oh.
Because you would still be drifting a little bit, so you wouldn't come to a complete stop, but you would get the control sensitivity as if you were stopped.
Yep.
You have to be quick on it. But yeah, that's totally a valid tactic. See, this is why I have concerns about enemy or not enemy starfighter. I have concerns about that too, because
Starfighter Origins.
But yeah, is that what they call it now?
Now, I
The
guess you are
impeller-
thinking about the
impeller guys?
Starfighter increment.
Yes, yeah, Starfighter Inc. Right. Because I've flown it. I've flown it a little. Well, I think it's like the level of reality that they're putting in there. They do have the flight model. Well, they do have a flight model in there that's very much like what I said I want, right? The problem is that it kind of feels a little bit slow, like you don't have the acceleration and such that you're used to in like a TIE Fighter game.
Opportunity to try it?
Yeah.
When? For their first
NDA.
Yeah, I'm NDA, but I'm
okay.
Actively I have it. So, but I haven't really formed an opinion on it yet. It's a thing where I need to sit with Jack and actually get like a tour of it, because it's still
not everyone knows who you mean when you
there.
say Jack. Just by the way,
Yeah,
you
I know.
gotta specify Jack Mames.
I know. Okay. So it's like he last time that we talked, it was like he was getting ready to go to GDC and Life in an Uproar, and then he was going to PAX and stuff. So it was just like we haven't hooked up and actually got that done yet. But I don't mind, because I'm being patient and allowing it to develop a little bit more, because it's not to the point where I want to actually have comments yet. I just kind of still want to see what they're doing. Because it looks very, very interesting, right? But it's the thing about when you understand about how fast that ship's going to accelerate, right? And then you have to, because it is Newtonian, so if you want to stop, you have to turn around and point the engine the other way, and then you slow down at the rate that you accelerated. So if you accelerate too hard, then you're going to just fly right out of the arena, right? So there's a reason that they do what they do, and it's also like large objects, big distances, right? It's like this is a big asteroid, right? So it doesn't feel fast because you're a very tiny ship and you're next to a very large ship or something, right? So it's just I think in like the Star Wars games, the velocity and stuff was very, very distorted to make it feel much faster than it could have been.
Right, but it's also not Newtonian in that sense either.
That's true. But the thing is, the ship does limit it, right? At least in the flight model, a couple months ago when I screwed around with it, you have compensators, and it will limit what you're doing, right, to what it can handle, and that way it keeps the nose pointed. But you can shut that off if you want, and get weird, right? But I don't know. I mean, like I'm saying, it's so early that it's like it was like a barely playable thing, right? And they've got it to the point where they can do multiplayer with it now. And
But
I have not
I have
yet
a question,
participated
though,
in
for you.
that.
I have a question though for you. With Newtonian physics, I mean, are you wanting to go real fast though? Like, I would think you wouldn't.
Well, that's my point. Is because it's Newtonian physics, you really don't want to get hauling ass, because if you see another target and he's coming at you as fast as you're coming at him, you guys are going to blow past each other, and it'll be minutes before you can get back together, right? So it tries to keep it to a manageable speed like that. I just I don't know. I mean, it's like it's a very in testing flight thing right now, but but the thing that we're used to is a game that feels like TIE Fighter, Freespace, something like that. This has a completely alien feel if you're expecting that, but it's actually pretty cool. It demands a lot of skill, I'll say that. But the thing is, because it is so different than a TIE Fighter kind of flight model, where it's not super forgiving and everything. It's much more of a sim, but it's a sim that's take the flight model from the Battlestar Galactica mod, right, and then amp that up about 10 times more realistic, and that's what's going on here. Plus, there's a fuel gauge, so if you burn the engine up too hot, you're going to just empty your fuel tank out, and they do take into account weight. So as you burn out fuel, your ship maneuvers better because it weighs less mass, same thrust, right? All that stuff's going on here.
I worry that the more realism they add, the smaller a niche they're going to find themselves in.
Well, they need to find
You
that
know.
sweet spot somewhere
Yeah.
between the X-wing people and the rivet counters.
But I don't know.
And
I don't know if they're going to. I mean, that's we got to find out. You know, that's what we got to wait
well,
for.
but I'm sure what'll happen, right? I'm hoping that they have their plan B in there, where it's like, okay, we can do this like maximum realism, and then you can also dial it down, right, to the point where you are playing TIE Fighter, and let the community figure out where they want to play this thing, because it's very much like War Thunder, right? You can play War Thunder in full realism, and it's hard. Like there's no aids to assist you. It's like if you don't see the enemy with your eyeballs, you're not going to get like a marker on the screen that tells you where to look or anything. And then the flight model is like every bit as brutal as IL-2 ever was. But then you can also take it down to like a medium range, which is where I play it, because it's manageable. It's got a little bit of assists. Or you can just take it down to pure arcade. And at that point, arcade is literally arcade. You know, there's not really a lot of energy modeling and stuff. You can hardly stall. That's where people with mouse and keyboard excel. You're not going to beat somebody with a mouse in there if you get a joystick, because they're just far too accurate. Because you point at somebody and then click the button. The plane essentially flies like a freelancer ship at that point. It goes wherever you put the mouse. So
that may cause a big problem, because it could segregate the player base at launch. And
well,
for a specifically multiplayer game, it's not something that you should want to do.
no,
Like,
that's true.
like in War Thunder.
But
In War Thunder, do they separate people out who have those different flight
absolutely.
models? Okay.
Yep.
That's
And
You
if
better
you want to
separate the guys,
but the-
because else you will have plenty of salt on the table.
Oh yeah, because I'm playing in
Oh, yes.
realistic, and then the other guy's flying a spaceship. You know, he's got a UFO. So yeah, it's totally. But the thing is, the reward for playing in more realistic is you score like 10 times more points for a kill, because you actually worked for it. Like you go out on a mission, you get 1-2 kills, you feel pretty damn good. And then in arcade, you know, it's just like, did I get 50? You know, it's a whole different animal. But it's there for like the people that just want to have fun and screw around with it. And then the super casual players. But then you get the hardcore people in there. You know, they got a HODAS and like head tracking, and you have to have head tracking to play the sim version, because you have to be looking around, or you know, you're just not going to see the enemy and you're going to die. Have you ever played Aces High? It was like also like Warbirds kind of game, but yeah, old. It's old, but it was the best of them, you know. And I played a lot of Aces High, and yeah, War Thunder can crank up to that level of sim realism and also look as good as it does. I just don't play it up on that level because you go to get a match, you know, it's like if I go to find an arcade match, I'm in instantly. I click the button, pow, we're playing. If I go for like a realistic, which is the middle mode, I might wait a minute or two for the lobby to fill up. And if I go to sim, I could be 30 minutes in between fights because it has to find 10 people that are willing to play sim, and not a lot of people do. So you end up with actually like groups of people, you know, like clans or whatever that fly in that. So you get a group of friends and then you go play sim rather than sit around and wait. So, you know, you just bring a number of people. So that's more like events and stuff that that's for. But I'm perfectly happy with it with that middle realism thing. And I'm thinking that that's probably what Starfighter Inc. is going to run into is like they're developing it for like that hardcore edge, right? But the thing is, if they develop that and they do it right, then they always have the option to back it down and adjust it to where it's good, right? For the majority of people, they'll hit critical mass at some point on a
To
difficulty
be
slider.
honest, every sim would have the option to back it down.
Yeah, but some do it better than others, right? Like if you fly a DCS, I really don't like the arcade settings on that. It isn't really representative of the aircraft the way that I want it to be. But then if you play at full realism, it's like you better go to school because you're gonna have to learn like all these systems and stuff. It took me a month to figure out how to fly the A-10C, and it was like a whole weekend just to get a ramp start figured out. And yeah, that was some stuff.
Speaking of controls, I think one of the reason TIE Fighter and Freespace 2 work so well, I'm bringing it back, you guys. I'm bringing it back. Is because the controls are just so fucking perfect. They're just so tight. Like, it's just there aren't a lot of great space sims where like you point the stick where you want to go and you go there. It feels effortlessly. It feels effortless. You know, it feels like intuitive. You know, and not a lot of other space games really nail that. Like, what we're talking about with narrative, like, you don't really think, when you think of a game like Tachyon, you don't think of the flight engine. You don't think of the dogfighting, because it wasn't that great. You think of Bruce Campbell. You think of the story, because that's the great part. Is
right. Well, whenever you're flying TIE Fighter, you're not thinking about how to control the ship.
Right.
You're thinking about what's on my radar.
Exactly.
Where are things in relation to me?
It feels like an extension of yourself.
Right, and it
so
gets
few
there
other
after
games.
a couple thousand hours like we've played. But
yeah,
but really, yeah, the flying never gives anybody, you know, new people, they don't have any trouble with that, right?
Mhm.
There's no ground to run into. So and all that energy management stuff's right out the window. So then what do you got? Well, I got to find the enemy, so I got to learn how to read that radar, and every space game kind of does it different. You got the Star Wars, you know, front radar, back radar model, and then you got the wing commander thing with the, you know, the centers in front of you, the edges behind you, and then you have Elite, which is like a flat disc, and then enemies around you and on altitude poles to show.
Which one do you think works best out of all of them? Because I'm fine with them all, but for some reason I think TIE Fighter's front and back separate screens.
Both of them have their pros.
I think they all have their pros.
I tend to read that easier because it's like if there's two screens and I see a dot on the screen that is behind me, I immediately know that's behind me.
And that's dangerous if it's red.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, there's red on the left side.
The thing that the TIE Fighter model is missing is the direction of the dot. You don't know very well if the dot is coming for you or is just passing behind you.
Right, which is why they have that that camera, right? Every time you target something, it shows the thing down. And old flight sims used to do that too, because it was like 320 by 200 was your resolution. So it's really hard to tell which way a dot is pointed when it's like one pixel.
Yeah, you don't have many pixels.
So yeah, so like F-19, which I know that, you know, Joe Mastriani is looking at, right? He's doing a thing on it. And he, you know, F-19 was very much like that. where in an airplane, it was almost kind of like TIE Fighter in an airplane, really, if you think about the complexity of the systems and stuff that was going on. It had the ground, but it didn't have a whole lot of energy management complexity. It was, if you point the plane up, you go slower. You point it down, you go a little faster. So it wasn't like a realistic deal of thrust to weight to gravity.
But coming back to the energy management, because I think I heard you 2 times already saying that it was not something very good about those games.
Well, it wasn't very good for new players, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But if I'm playing a flight sim, energy management is how I'm going to win or lose. If I play against another human, it's going to be about that. It's going to be like, do I know that my plane turns tighter than his? If I turn tighter than his, I don't want to chase him in a vertical fight because I'm going to lose. So it's just, you have to know your aircraft and you have to know the one that you're in the fight with and try to decide, so then you end up with tactics, boom and zoom, right? You climb up out of the fight, turn around, dive through it, climb back up out, dive through it again. So you do slashing attacks. If you're Japanese and you had a 0, you want to try to trick your enemy into doing a circle fight because you're going to turn inside of them like crazy. So American pilots learned real fast, don't try to turn with a 0. So, and it's just like, you know what, if you need to get away from them, just dive, just point the nose down. They can't chase you because they won't accelerate as fast as you do. And then you break away and, climb up above them and start an energy fight.
And that's part of what I think made TIE Fighter and Freespace very good, is that they had the energy management was there, even if the game was arcadey in its initial feeling. If you wanted to get good at the game, you had to master the energy transfer between different components.
Oh, absolutely.
And that was something that managed to raise the skill ceiling while keeping a skill floor pretty low.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because at that point, it wasn't about the skill of actually flying. It was the skill of managing the ship. It's like, can I balance my shields? Do I know where to put the energy, front shields, back shields, balance them out? And, it's like positioning of where the enemy is. Am I going to get shot by what? Are they shooting a missile at me?
Right.
If there's a missile inbound, then I need to think about that missile instead of anything else. It's like, look at my shields. Do I have enough to take a missile hit? It's going to hit me in behind. Okay, I'll double reinforce the back. So yeah, there was a lot of really quick thinking that you had to do about energy and shield management.
And with both games, they eased you into that. Like, you didn't need to do that sort of thing right away. Like, they kind of eased you into that.
TIE
The first.
The TIE Fighter, the basic TIE Fighter didn't have any shields, for instance.
Right, but you didn't really have to deal with energy management for your engines or guns the first thing out. You could, but you didn't really need to, And it was nice that in those first few missions you could play around with it and get a feel for it. And I think,
but then they got you into the time stuff where it's like, I have to catch those guys before they escape. Yeah. So I got to dump all my power into my engines, but then my guns are going to be dry when I get there and I need to fight. Well, that means I have to know how to pull energy out of my shields into my weapons so that I can shoot immediately once I get there. So then you get that complexity, but the game over a series of many missions slowly ramps up to that. So I think they did a brilliant job.
Exactly.
Of the curve.
Exactly. And one thing that Freespace has that does a great job with that is its tutorials. I mean, you skip them after you play them you play the first game, you play the game the first or second time. But Freespace 2 has some really excellent tutorials. Like, they're just kind of like the best in the business almost. And they really...
TIE Fighter courses are good too. The obstacle course that they have.
The what?
There
is in TIE Fighter obstacle course.
Yeah, the obstacle course where you flew through the pipe.
Right.
And you had to shoot
They were infinite, so they could become very hard at the end.
Right. And those were good too, but I'm saying I think Freespace built upon what TIE Fighter had done before in a lot of ways. But I think one of the reasons Freespace excels is because it actually has a guided tutorial, and I think that's easier on newer players than the course in TIE Fighter.
Yeah, I think it is actually the first game that did that, where you had an instructor that was out there like, okay, hit this, now lock me up, and all right, now here's how you manage your energy.
You might
Those
be
things.
right.
So,
I really can't think of another game before maybe the first Freespace. I think it was the first Freespace that had that, where
yeah, because Wing Commander, not so much. I
not
don't,
so much. No.
people, I don't think you even had to actually actively manage energy so much in Wing Commander. You would be more
really.
survivable if you did, but I beat those games without ever touching energy.
I forgot it even had them until you just
Yep.
brought it up.
It's like in Elite too. In Elite Dangerous, I never touched the energy management, and I have many hours in the game.
Oh, come fight me.
Yes,
then
but
you will.
I'm not fighting humans in the game.
Yeah. You know what? Actually, whenever they turned the AI up and everybody was like, "Oh my God, the AI is too hard," what the AI was doing was actually managing
managing the
system.
energy.
Yep, that's what it was doing. So it's like, I can't shoot
Except
at him
the
and
one
he's shooting at me.
time
I'm gonna
after
put it all in my
engineers.
shields. Yeah, that was funny though. And I like the articles that people wrote. It was like the AI has gone crazy and it's invented super weapons to kill the players. And it's like, no. But nice tabloid. That's So,
but then again, the game never teaches you to use the energy.
no, that
And we
game
come back to
that
the
game
subject
teaches you
of the-
nothing.
It doesn't
That's
really
actually
teach
the
you a
best
lot.
part of the game when
Yeah.
you don't know anything. That initial 10, 20 hours when you're trying to figure it out, then it's
Yeah.
exciting. Once you
Yeah.
know everything, it's just like,
Eh.
oh, it's more planets.
I've been tempted
same old.
I've been tempted to reset my character in Elite, just to go back to that. Honestly,
Well, you can really easy. Just buy
I know. I'm saying it's very tempting.
buy a Sidewinder.
Yeah.
You can just pretend.
Oh, pretend. I know. I'm thinking of actually doing it. I don't know why, because I'm so bored with Elite right now. So bored.
But see, that's the thing. You have to make your own challenges because it's not going to do it for you.
And the missions just aren't fun right now. But anyway,
Yeah.
Meryl did in the chat brings up something I did want to talk about.
The user interface,
The UI. Yeah, I still think Freespace 2 especially has pretty much the best UI in the business. And
you know why? Because they didn't bother to put a cockpit around it.
Because they didn't add a cockpit? Yeah.
Yep.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Like
you got
when
open line of sight.
Yeah.
I fly TIE Fighter with the no cockpit thing all the time.
But they take
and
so
I turn
much
the cockpit on when I need to look at the radar.
Oh, I can't do that. They
the
take
camera thing.
They take so much information away when you turn that on.
No. But
hate
it's
that.
like whenever I'm actually in a dogfight, I don't care. So I toggle
You need
it
visibility.
That's fair.
Yeah, it's on and off,
That's
right?
fair.
So if I'm flying to something or looking for a target, I turn the cockpit back on. So it's kind of it almost simulates like, okay, I'm just focusing out the window. I'm not looking at that stuff.
It's the targeting
And,
computer from Star Wars.
Yeah.
You're turning on the anyway.
It's like, Jim, you switched off your targeting computer. It's okay. I got this. Hold my beer.
Everything. I'm all right.
Hold my beer, Kenobi.
But yeah, Freespace 2, you're right. It took out the cockpit. And some people still don't like it for that. I know some people are like, I want a cockpit. Nah, I'm good without. Like,
well, then you play.
Then again, in TIE Fighter, the TIE Fighter ships had a nice in between.
Right.
Because
that's
you
true.
had plenty of visibility and not many struts, and you didn't have the bottom half covered by useless schemorphic elements.
I'm gonna go back to Diaspora because that's the best of both, right? There's minimal cockpit, it doesn't get in your way, and there's actually a reason for it. So, and plus it's atmospheric, it makes you actually feel like you're in a Viper.
Exactly.
Because you would forget, right? If you weren't looking down the nose of the Viper the whole time, then it's just kind of like, oh, I'm free space, right? But because you actually see your ship, that changes that a bit. So
I think with Freespace though, I think it's got some elements that even other games still to this day lack, that really add to not only situational awareness but immersion, like the escort list. Like, how much do I love the escort list? It's like my favorite goddamn thing in Freespace 2. Like, oh, I just need to quickly monitor the ships that are important to me. Oh, there they are. Oh, that one's getting shot at. EEA. Done. You know, I have a key for everything. I know what to do. And there it is. Like, oh, this second ship on the list is being attacked. E, and then A. Oh, that ship is attacking it. I'm going to go shoot it. Or I'm going to tell this guy to shoot it. So I think that right there just adds so much, not only to the immersion, but the situational awareness, which is so important in these games. Wait, what?
Yep.
Hang on. Hannibal in the chat says, when you think about it, TIE fighters have German bomber cockpits. So it's not just the weapons. So it's actually not just the weapons the stormtroopers use. That's what Hannibal in the chat says. That's an interesting point.
Is it a German bomber cockpit because of being multiple panes of glass?
Because that was like every bomber at the time, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, every World War II bomber was just that, especially where the bomber was that just big open, kind of like the ASP cockpit, this big bubble,
which is the best one in Elite.
Oh, I agree. That's why I haven't upgraded from the ASP. I'm like, I got this cockpit. Why would I switch to anything else? And the ship is great too. It's not just the cockpit. The ship is great. Why would I upgrade? Yeah, Python's better. Whatever. I got this bubble. I'm in a bubble of glass. It's great. But yeah, TIE Fighter.
And in VR is just.
Oh really?
You were talking about spatial awareness. That's something that VR in cockpit games gives you, like, by orders of magnitude more.
Right now, since you have VR and most of us do not.
Yeah, I know. I'm not in a fertile VR ground here.
No. I just want to ask you, like, as someone who's used it, I want to ask you, do you think it's got longevity for this genre, or do you think it's just a fad that'll pass?
It may even be the only thing that will be left in VR to do in a few years. Because for me, the other kind of VR stuff, I mean, the shooters, the gimmicky games, all that stuff is not very interesting. But everything that plays into a cockpit, racing games, space game, plane games, mech games, it's just exactly what you imagine it should be. You are in the machine that you are driving, piloting, flying. And as soon as the technology is just a little bit cheaper, because I totally understand that today many people think it is expensive, but it's once you try it, once you try the quality VR, I don't mean the Gear VR, I don't mean cardboard, I don't mean the Chinese knockoffs. I mean the ones that you can plug in a modern computer and have them nearly plug and play setup. This is just it's just exactly what we dreamed of in the 90s. And I mean, I never ever played Elite Dangerous without VR. I spent 400 hours in the game, but all in VR. And I spent about 1,000 hours in Valkyrie, all in VR. And I am able to stay in one sitting for about 20. The longest I did was in Elite, the travel to Sagittarius A. I did it in VR in one setting, 25 hours, listening to you guys, by the way.
Wow. I don't know how anybody could take that for 25 hours.
I know, right?
Well, they were saying that, like, I was watching the Eve Fan Fest, and they were saying that the average length of people playing Eve Valkyrie was between like 4 to 6 hours.
Well, yeah, that's the thing with
right.
That's the thing with VR, right? Because the stuff that you get from the rest of the industry, because they don't know what the hell to do with it, right? Is they say, well, we try to do first-person shooter, but everybody gets a little bit sick to their stomach, so if first-person shooters are out, we don't know what to do with the thing. It's like driving games, flying games, giant robot games, space games, anything that you are seated operating
with a cockpit visible.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're seated and you have a frame of reference around you that does not move, the whole world around can do whatever it wants then, because you just do not get sick. But
To be
then
fair,
I'm immune
you
to the
still
first
get a
person.
little bit sick if you are sensible to transportation sickness. It still is an issue even in cockpit games.
Hmm.
But here we are in the individual tolerance. I mean, it's like it's really like how hello, what's the name? The thing that the sailors get.
What, seasickness?
Seasickness. It's like that. The more you do it, the less you get
Right.
it.
Yeah,
That's fair.
absolutely.
That
And
makes
it,
sense.
Well,
because I
the
can
more
play
more
first person shooters in
the
the
more you
thing.
do it like in practice, but if you start getting motion sickness while doing it, it's best to stop because if you try and push through motion sickness,
Oh
it'll
yes,
only
you
get
Well,
worse.
right,
yes,
but
yes.
it's repeated exposure.
Right.
And
And
Just
in
want to make
addition,
sure I clarified that.
yes, it is important. You should not push when you feel sick. Stop as soon as you feel sick. And there is also a market, in the tutorial of the games to have missions that ease you into it. First missions being just flying in a straight line and then incrementally adding movement, pitch, yaw, roll.
a way that they would actually fix the problem, they'd need some way to induce, because it's your inner ear that actually
Vestibular
tells your
system,
brain.
yes.
Yeah, so it tells your brain about motion and things. So they could actually, if they had some way of inducing sensory stuff to your inner ear, they could actually change your sense of balance and make it just feel natural. Although that would make the virtual reality simulation about 10 times more real if they could do that, because then it's like you jump off a cliff and then you feel the fall. So that I probably people would just have heart attacks. So probably don't do that.
Yeah, because right now it feels easy to fly a ship, but if I had to feel the G's that I take in the maneuvers that I do, I'm not sure it would be so easy.
Yeah, definitely that. I mean, I think racing games are amazing in VR. Have you played
Assetto Corsa and Project Cars.
oh, okay. Yeah, because then they have iRacing, which
Oh,
is
Assetto Corsa. Talk
really
about a
great.
good racing game.
Which
They
game?
both have Assetto Corsa.
It's a great racing game.
Oh yes, that looks really
has-
good.
See,
And in VR, it's just again, it is a different game because once you have tried those games in VR, it's very hard to go back into simple 2D. You just once you get the spatial awareness, you can just move a little bit of your head and you can see a different line. You can see if you are hitting the apex. It's just it just really adds something to the
right, and
experience.
even just
Does
the
it add the
3D.
$600 worth of for the experience? Maybe not for everyone, but I think enough for the industry to survive. And even if it becomes a niche industry, it will it will survive. It will not go the way of the 3D
Well,
TV.
for me,
Okay.
the big thing is not so much the head tracking, right, and the being able to look all around. I mean, it's like I got a track IR, I can do that already. The thing to me is the depth perception, because when you're flying any kind of simulator, you're driving a car or whatever, like a racing game, right? You can tell how far away you are from the corner.
It's
You're not looking for visual cues.
not really, because in truth, your depth perception is only so efficient as 3 or 4 meters in front of you. Anything, even in real life, anything further than that uses visual cues and not the stereoscopic of your eyes.
Have you tried like an Oculus, Jim?
Yeah, I tried it like a demo thing they had set up at Best Buy. It's essentially a very similar experience to what I had with that Chinese thing. But then again, that was like a high end, like $400 Chinese headset too. So it wasn't like some, cheap telephone thing. But the reason that I looked at that thing though is because an Oculus won't work with my laptop. Even though my laptop's got like a SLI 970 in it, it just says, "Oh, you got a laptop." Nope. It's just like, man,
That's the
I got
mobile
more than
version of
enough
the chip.
machine.
That's probably why.
Yeah, that's what does it.
It will work.
It's the mobile version of the chip, though. That's
No,
that's correct.
no. I mean, it will still work. If you have a 780, it will run. Not with the maximum settings, but it will.
Oh, really? Okay.
I mean,
Well,
you will have a banner that will say, your computer is not up to par, but there is nothing really preventing you to run the thing. Well, there may be issue with the USB. USB is the you want a limitation in hardware. It actually in the USB.
yeah. Well, I've got
believe it.
USB 3 on it.
No,
I mean,
but even it's not having USB 3 or not. It's Oculus actually uses the USB 3 specification to the limit of the specification, and that's when we realized that most hardware manufacturers were not really implementing the specification as they should have done.
oh, so do
So
you end up?
depending on the manufacturer of your chipset, you may or may not be able to run the Oculus. That
Oh,
is
okay. So
that is
for
a
desktop,
real
you
issue.
have the option of putting a third party.
An addition, yes, an additional card in a laptop. If you don't have the right chipset, it may be out.
Okay,
of
so
the
so I have a
equation.
question for you about that then. My use case is not so much that I want to play all these VR only games, because they're toys.
Yeah, but you want
right?
to
And
play your former
I'm not
library
into
of
that.
games.
Absolutely. And the problem that I cannot,
That's a bad idea.
well, but it's fun though. It's like I played Fallout New Vegas with the thing on. It was just amazing. The only problem that I have with it is that because most of the stuff, like if you look at Nvidia, they did that. What do they call that? It was the 3D glasses. It was liquid crystal shutter, 3D, and you had to have a 120 hertz monitor to do it, and that gave you really nice depth perception in games. But the yeah. Anyway, so the old games still actually respect that, and you can induce the 3D stereo separation in anything. Like you play World of Warcraft in 3D, it'll just do it because that's a video card driver thing, and I can kick it into that mode, and it does just fine. The problem that I have though is whenever you're taking a 1080p screen and then you cut it in half, because their 3D technology used the whole screen, but alternated frames for the left eye, right eye.
And the UI
But
doesn't
with an
fuck
Oculus, well, the UI I didn't mind. There was some things where the UI didn't, but some of the games the UI was okay, or it just looked like a floating thing. It's like the UI was just floating in the air in front of you, and I was okay with that. But the problem that I have though is the horizontal resolution, because you have a game that's normally in 1080p, like GTA 5, and you have to make that game fit in half the width because the screen gets split and then half of it goes to each eye. Well, that throws the ratio out. So instead of being 16:9, now you're at 8:9. And the game, so you end up with like skinny, really tall people, and it just doesn't look right at all. If I could cure that, I would be fine. I would be able to play my entire legacy library. I'd have an Oculus right now.
Well, to be fair, there are commercial solutions for that. Vorpix comes to mind.
Yeah,
It's
I messed around with TriDef, and I
and
didn't get into
it,
Vorpex because it seemed like a very similar program, right? But does it actually distort the
well,
horizontal
no,
to make it?
that's the point.
Okay,
It's that
guys.
they
Guys.
inject our.
Okay.
Sorry.
We are
All right.
getting way off the reservation here.
I know, but I'm just so desperate to make that shit work because I want an Oculus, but I want an Oculus for my old crap.
I think what
Anyway.
you need is just, to get a new computer and a Vive. That's what I'm going to do. That's what you need to do. And that's really all there is to it, I think.
And then you can play space game in a cockpit, a real cockpit, a real virtual cockpit.
Is it real?
Well, I'd want to fire up DCS. That'd be my go-to thing, right? Like get in DCS, load up a helicopter, and go flying.
I plan on upgrading my computer in maybe a year or so. And
Mhm.
I'm gonna be interested to see where VR is then. Like, am I gonna give a crap about it in a year? I don't know. I kind of don't give a crap about it now. I'm gonna be honest because I see it as so niche that I worry that these things that are coming out that are VR only are not going to find enough of an audience to
Oh,
get any
absolutely.
traction.
They're, like
And
I said,
so,
they're little toys, and that's not going to sell an
yeah.
$800 headset.
But
But
getting
they will
back,
sell it to the pilots
but
because sim pilots will build a whole room.
uh,
You know,
I wish
I
I
mean,
Well-
could.
we're the people that spend the money, right?
Like, can you imagine Freespace 2 in VR? Like, there's no cockpits, but
Yes.
just that you could move or just you'd look around a bubble, basically. I mean,
Yeah. So what you do is you get Vorpex, and you get an Oculus, and you play Freespace 2 in VR today.
eh,
That's how
Wow.
you do it. That's what I'm talking about, man. The
I've-
legacy stuff. If you can fix that aspect ratio shit,
Well,
the
I think you
problem-
need to try Vorpix.
the problem
Yeah,
is with games like Freespace 2, there's no smooth transition left to right. You know, it's like a separate left view, it's a separate right view. I've tried Track IR with Freespace 2 and it doesn't
Because
really
I think
work.
the engine cannot do it.
Yeah, it's not built to do it. And so
right.
I think even with legacy stuff, you're going to run into problems where, like,
You know what game works amazingly well
what's that?
is X-Wing Alliance, because
I-
you got the
yeah,
cockpit
I
turned
believe
on,
it.
and you
I
can do
believe
head
it.
tracking and look all around, and yeah,
Um,
and that thing that was on the PlayStation, right, with the Battlefront thing where there's like that one mission that's the VR mission. Have you watched a YouTube video of that? It's freaking
Yes,
amazing.
I watched it.
I could only play it
Except-
once though, and then it'd
Except
be like
to come
I've seen
back
it.
to the issue that we talked at the beginning, the controls seems to be shit. Sorry, but
No,
it
no.
seems
It's nice to
it
have someone
seems that
else
it's
curse.
really not a dogfight game because
No.
they are so worried that people will get sick into the cockpit that
Right.
you cannot roll.
What?
You have limited yaw. Yes,
What?
you cannot roll.
What?
Yes, yes.
So how does Valkyrie treat that? Are they just like, good luck, hope you don't puke, or I'm gonna let you do everything?
Well, Valkyrie does it by putting on the stick by default. You have yaw and pitch,
Mhm.
like in X-Wing and in Freespace, and you roll with the bumpers on the stick by default.
Okay.
So you have limited amount of roll when you begin, and the more you are comfortable, the more you start to use the roll function, because roll is really the one that usually makes the people go puke themselves.
So when you
And then you
thought-
can remap
Sorry.
later.
Good.
No, go on.
No, so when you thought of this topic, is it because like when you're playing Valkyrie, for example, do you think, wow, this game would be so much better if it used the flight model from Freespace 2? Is that kind of what got you onto this topic?
Partially, yes. There is a lot of issues with the. There are some people in the Valkyrie community that are veteran Freespace 2 player that played a lot in the multiplayer in Freespace.
Mm-hmm.
And they used to say that Valkyrie is the closest flight model to Freespace that they have met these years. Except that it's like it is just right not doing it correctly. Especially because, as I said before, there is no energy management in the game.
Yeah.
There is only a simple boost and brake button. So there is no real throttle management.
Mm.
And
you said there's no throttle management?
No real throttle management.
What?
Okay.
Because actually what the skilled players found out is that you can have some kind of throttle management by using a skill of tapping the boost and the brake.
Yeah, because it's basically like you go at 50% speed all the time.
Exactly.
Wanna
So
slow down, you
constant
squeeze more trigger.
speed, because acceleration
It's
is something that causes sickness.
That's kind of
God's
like that's like Rogue Squadron though, you know, like some of those
Yes.
like console
I
space
guess that's
games were
true.
like that.
Very, very much like that.
And so you use the boost and the brake to drift and to power slide.
I'm actually okay with that, considering like I mean, I know it's not like dogfighting like what you would want, say, from Freespace 2 or X-Wing Alliance or something like that, or X-Wing versus TIE Fighter. But for something that's meant to be like uh, I mean, I would assume, I haven't played it, but I would assume the maps aren't that large.
Depends on the map. Depends on the game mode.
Yeah, I'm gonna have
I
to watch
mean,
some YouTube video of this thing
I,
because
if I remember correctly from like my lore with EVE Online, since I play EVE Online a lot, fighters in general typically never like had stop movement features other than to say to like dock or land or something like that. They were usually always flying, and the lack of management between like shields, weapons, and stuff like that makes sense when you consider how the rest of EVE lore works. You don't really have that kind of option.
So it would be because of the lore and not because of the game design.
Partially, and because I mean, I was watching FanFest and they were talking about how they're introducing new ground-based maps right over like snow-covered hills and stuff like that, with like refinery assaults and stuff like that. And one person asked in the audience, because they had a Q&A at the end, and he said, is the flight mechanic going to be the same or different for
It's
the
exactly
ground
the same.
stuff? And the guy says, well, it's going to be the exact same because we want to make sure we keep it all the same across the board.
Because the ground stuff, just to be clear, the ground stuff is just a single new map.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
What?
It's just a new map.
What
Okay.
That's the issue I have with this game. I like it a lot, but the devs are just
well,
sorry.
That's my issue with CCP though. In general, they've never really been focused properly. I mean, they kind of had to branch out because they needed to make money elsewhere, because like EVE wasn't enough.
why
So
didn't they bring Dust to the PC then?
Because they couldn't, because they can't,
because it would be destroyed by every other FPS on the PC.
Well, partially, but mainly with the whole thing with Dust 514 was it was a licensing issue with Sony. So with Sony, they're like, you're exclusive to our console and you can't put it anywhere else. So when Dust 514 ended and CCP pulled the plug, they had to begin development on a new game, which they're in the middle of developing. But it's not Dust 514. It's a whole new FPS that they're working on. But again, it's like, they have EVE Online, they have EVE Valkyrie, they have two other VR
Gunjack
games,
and Arena, something like that.
Yeah, which are mobile VR games. They're not even Oculus Rift type games. And then there's this other new VR game that's like it's almost like
Tron.
a Tron,
the
Disc Wars,
yes.
almost.
Yeah. You know what I need? I need Titanfall VR.
Oh,
Thanks.
hell yes.
Dude,
there was a demo in the early days of the Oculus of a game that was a bit halfway between Titanfall and MechWarrior.
Yeah, it actually reminded me of Robot Jocks.
But
it was very much like Robot Jocks.
We never heard about it again since the demo stage. I should look up what they have become.
So I think really, as part of our topic, one of the things that I think that we've all really kind of come to the conclusion of is you can really make a good flight mechanic game, but it needs something to like go with it. Or you can make a halfway decent flight mechanic game and have good narrative, or you need objectives or something. We're not getting enough of the second part. I think we're getting enough of the first part, but we're not really getting enough of the second part.
Well, the first part, I think it might be even harder to do than the actual mechanics of the game itself, like coming up with a good story, good characters, good dialogue.
Well, that's what I mean. I think we're looking at the parts in the different orders. So, like the flight mechanic type stuff, we're getting variations of a same tune with different games, right? Like you have Elite Dangerous, you have Starsys, and if you play Arena Commander, you have the new Starfighter Inc., which Jim's talked briefly about. I mean, you have different ways of doing flight mechanics. You even have the No Man's Sky weird ass flight
Dude,
mechanics
what
too.
was that game that we played? And I cannot think of the name of it now. Where we're flying down through the canyons and stuff. We got the tour from the devs.
Bollocks! Infinity Battlescape.
Yes, that is probably the best planetary flight that I've ever had.
Oh,
as
right.
far as these games go,
That
that was
was
just
fun.
like
That was fun.
just like balls to the wall.
Even
blazing
for
through canyons.
even for a demo, just flying was so much fun.
Well, you know what was so fascinating to me there is the ship didn't have wings, but it was a lifting body, so you still had to bank and turn because it's like you're basically flying something that's shaped like the Millennium Falcon, but if you pull the nose up because of the shape of it, because it's a disc, then it's going to have lift. So you flew it kind of like an airplane, but it was more like flying an aerodynamic brick. But oh god, the momentum that you had there, right? Because you could fly it around like a plane, but then if you tried to turn really sharp, then you realize like, oh no, I'm playing a Newtonian physics spaceship game because now I'm flying backwards or sideways or whatever, right? But yeah, I really liked that game a lot. So
Can
got
you
my
repeat
eyes
the
on it.
name?
Infinity Battlescape.
Yeah, I'll send you a link.
Yeah, it kickstarted what, about 2 years ago, year ago,
Something like that. Yeah.
There's their Indiegogo thing there. It's December 2015 is when it was funded, 110% funded.
Oh, okay.
Oh, they found it.
So yeah, that's one we're looking forward to. But yeah, back to our topic. Another thing I wanted to mention that I think these two games do particularly well is they make their varied fighters and bombers feel different enough that you feel like you're flying in something different. Like with Wing Commander, like the fighters never really felt that different, you know. Like, oh, the broadsword is slower and turns a little slower. Whoop-de-doo, you know? I mean, it never really felt that different. But in TIE Fighter, especially, flying an assault gunboat feels very different than flying a TIE Fighter. Flying a TIE Bomber feels very different than flying a TIE Interceptor. You know? So they tweaked the flight model just enough, I feel, to give you a different feel per each craft. You know what I mean? So I think that they really, like, some missions that never felt like they gave you the right tool for the job. Like, oh, you're giving me a gunboat? Really? Fine. You know, I guess I'll take the gunboat. But yeah, then,
I think
go ahead.
I think it's like it's an extension of the energy system. You have three main class of ships that have each one a focus. One is focused on speed, one on power, and the other on health or something like that. And that's what gives you the different feeling for each of the ships.
This is true. Yeah, I mean, they really did a good job, like, making the interceptor feel different than the heavy fighter, feel different than the bomber, feel different than the more jack of all trades fighter. And it's not just about energy; it's about like how they felt when you were flying, how fast they went. So yeah, it's just these little things they did to tweak the flight models. I think just enough to make it feel right. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Now, so let me say the worst goddamn flight model in all of space games is
hit
No
me.
Man's Sky.
Oh, is it? I
Yep.
haven't played it. Is
Yep,
it that?
yep.
Really? It's that?
Yeah,
I hear
it's
it's
not
not much
great.
of a. I hear it's not much of a flight model. I hear it's more like a
well,
swimming.
that's the thing.
Someone described
It's
it as
a warp model.
Someone
in
described
the
it
early
as.
days,
Sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say in the early days with No Man's Sky, I don't know how it is now since they've done a lot of updates, but you had to have some mods just to get it to like, I want to land here. Well, we're going to land you somewhere within like 300 yards of where you wanted to land.
Yeah,
It's
because
like,
it would pick like a
what?
flat spot. It wouldn't let you land somewhere
Oh,
that
come
was
on.
a little bit of an
And
angle.
you were not free to crash either.
Yeah, well,
What?
the one
You
thing
were forced to, if you tried to go straight to the ground, the game said nope, and you were flying away.
yeah, so
Yeah, that's true.
there's a low altitude limit
Oh,
and
come
you
on.
can't get below a certain ceiling until you hit the land key, and then it'll let. There's a mod that lets you do it though. The mod for the flight model actually fixed the hell out of that flight model. But the one thing in there is even when you're in space, right? There's no ground to worry about at all. If you just pull up, right, you can actually tell when the ship like points vertical and then like flips over the other way because there's resistance to it. It's like it doesn't want to face directly upwards because it is a horizontal model. So it actually just does like a transition at the top and like, pops over and then you're going the other direction. It's not a smooth 360 flight model. It's very much like you're flying on a flat plane, and there's altitude, but it's not like a sphere. It's really weird feeling because it's just like I'm pulling on the stick and the game shouldn't be resisting me, and then if I try to just go horizontally, it's fine. So you can tell it's like something really weird going on there.
Someone
I quite remember that Battlestar Galactica Online had a similar issue.
Oh, really?
That you couldn't, yeah, if you tried to pull up, you'd eventually just start going into a spin because you
What?
couldn't go straight up. There was a limit technically
Yeah.
on how high in terms of altitude from zero you could be.
Yeah, well, this thing it's also angle, right? It's like the game gets confused when the vertical component, like the y angle becomes zero. It's just like I don't know which way I'm facing, and kind of resists it, so it hesitates for quite some time. So it's like a struggle to get it to flip over the pure vertical coordinate. It's really weird feeling. It's offensive, but other than that, I had hoped it would have. Okay, so one of the games, it's a space dogfighting thing, but it's also very much a flat space thing. Is Everspace,
Yeah.
but I love that game.
Yeah.
I could play that all day. It
Oh,
does
yeah.
not
Oh,
offend
yes.
me.
Someone told me that the flight model of No Man's Sky is basically like swimming through pudding. Does that sound accurate?
That's apt. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I heard, and it's a shame that apparently not much has been done to fix that.
There's been more stuff done to the planetary aspects, like you can buy a freighter and then you can make that a mobile base that as you travel through the galaxy, you can have it follow you and you can store ships on it, which is kind of cool. Okay, great. The flight model, yeah, not so great. But
Yeah.
I guess they're making some improvements.
So what?
It's
Sure.
not the improvements we want, but hey.
So what do you think of Mike DePool's House of the Flying Nun? Or yeah,
Uh,
House of the Dying Sun, you mean?
yeah.
yeah.
Is it that bad?
No, it's great.
No, the dog fighting has always been the best part of that game. That is a pretty close successor to TIE Fighter, I would say, because there's not a lot of energy management. It's kind of there. But that's definitely a solid successor in terms of flight modeling. The gameplay, which is why I'm not keen on it, it was really pared down from the initial design, and I think it lost something for it, in my opinion. But in terms of pure dogfighting, it's not bad, especially if you just want to use a controller and just jump in. It's not bad.
Yeah, I like it. I like it for for that, right? But it's like little quick set piece battles, a little bit of RNG kind of thing. But it's like here's a situation, jump in there, figure out how to kill this stuff, and at a great disadvantage, and then get the hell out because you're going to lose if you stick around too long. And I think that was his intent right from the get go. But it's I don't know. I like it for what it is. The control stuff, it's unfortunate you can't use a stick and throttle with it. Try as hard as I could to get it done. But it's gamepad. But I play it mouse and keyboard. I just don't give a shit, and I do just fine with that. But for the game that it is, because it's a little space roguelike kind of thing. It's ever spacey in a different flavor, but it's definitely like you're gonna die a lot.
Yeah.
So
and the other solid first-person shooter sim we've gotten the last few years is called Ethereum, but that bar is more in the flight, the Wing Commander flight model. So it's again kind of flying a desk a bit. Not as bad, but not as good as Freespace 2 or TIE Fighter. The last thing I wanted to bring up in terms of Freespace 2 and TIE Fighter, which the area I think they excel at mechanically, are the weapons. A lot of times with space games, like weapons are like, you know, like you pull your trigger and it doesn't feel like you're doing much, or it feels like you're doing, like the weapons in TIE Fighter and Freespace 2 are fantastic because you feel like you're doing damage. You feel like you're firing something that has weight and meaning to it. You know?
yeah,
what I mean?
like Space Raiders, or what the hell was that called? That iMagic game.
The what?
Star,
Star Raiders.
Star Rangers.
Star Rangers.
Yeah,
Yes,
Star Rangers.
yes.
That game had criminally bad feeling weapons. That was really the only fault with the game.
Yeah.
It was just like the lasers were just kind of like pew pew pew.
Yeah, you felt
know,
like you
and-
had to fire a million of them just to do a little bit of damage.
Yeah, and when you hit the enemy, it sounded like dice rolling in a cup, which
It
was
was a
really
Yahtzee
offensive.
cup. It was such a Yahtzee
Yeah.
cup. It's exactly what that was. It's like, why? Why are you using that sound
But,
effect?
well, you know, that's a whole nother topic, right? Is like when you hit the enemy, the games let you know, right? It has to. There's no sound in space, right? You're not gonna hear explosions and stuff. But oh god, what game was it? Well, Wing Commander used to be doing it a lot too, right? Like when you're hitting the enemy, you would actually, it's Privateer. That was the sound effect that is just burnt into my brain. Is when you're hitting the enemy and it's like bonk, 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 bonk. And it's just like,
Yes.
what?
Yes. Wow, 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 wow. Yeah, that kind of like, really? This is the.
Yeah.
But it was only with those beginning lasers, though, wasn't it? Like, didn't the sound effects get a bit meatier as your
I
weapons?
never really got past the beginning lasers in that thing.
Oh man, yeah. No, you got to.
I got it installed. I need to just.
You got to
persevere.
get to that
But-
Stealtech weapon, that Stealtech alien gun. Oh my god.
Oh, you mean the shit they take away from me in the
yes,
expansion?
yes,
Spoilers.
yes. That gun, that beautiful,
There's
beautiful
people.
gun.
There's people still mad about that. Like I'm mad about.
I'm still mad about it.
Taking my cow away in black and white.
No, I'm still mad about it. I refuse to play Righteous Fire because of it. Like, I know there's more Privateer out there in Righteous Fire. I will not play it because they took my gun away. I flat out refuse.
Private Gemini Gold.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah, I like that a lot. A big problem that I had with the original Privateer is that the enemies did not feel like you were dogfighting them. It's like they would head directly at you, and you would trade shots, and then they would head directly away from you.
But that's Wing Commander.
And then you try to hit them.
But that's Wing Commander.
Yeah, but it was worse than it was.
Well, yeah,
worse
because
than
they give you a
normal.
really shitty ship. Excuse me, a really crappy ship in the beginning. Nothing you flew in the beginning of Wing Commander 1 or 2 is as bad as the Tarsus. Nothing.
Right.
I
So
mean,
okay,
even the what was it, the
In-
ferret?
in a-
Was it the ferret in Wing Commander 2? You know,
yes,
even that
ancestor
was
of the Albion skunk.
yeah, even that was better than the Tarsus in terms of fighting. You get a
Yeah.
couple. You get a couple hits on a Tarsus. Yeah, goodbye.
And what's your take, guys, between beam weapons and pulse weapons?
Oh,
Do you have any kind of preference?
I actually love a. I
Depends,
actually
in my opinion.
I love a good mix. Like my favorite is like when you have, like Elite does a good job of this. I think when you have a beam weapon that takes down shields, and then you have like a mass driver that chinks armor. You know, I love that mix. And,
I like. I'm going back to Battlestar Galactica again.
mhm.
Putting big 30mm slug throwing on a spaceship is
yeah,
frickin'
those are
great.
nice. Those
Because
the guns in BSG are yeah, those are fantastic.
Yeah, because okay, kinetic weapons are gonna win, right? Because lasers, it's like I can just make my hull out of ceramic and you can shoot me with a damn laser all day and I'm not gonna care, right? Because you're not gonna cook me. The scary weapons would actually be radiation weapons because it doesn't hurt my ship at all. You just bake the pilot, right? That's reason enough to not put a pilot in it. The real deal would be, you know how like Elite does that telepresence thing where you're not really in the fighter, you just like plug your brain in and into the fighter kind of thing. That would be the solution, I think, if you could do such a thing.
Wait, Elite does that?
Yeah. Yep. You're not in the flight. You're not in the fighter. You're still in the ship. And that's why the fighter can get destroyed, and then you just are back.
Yes. The small fighters. Yes. Sorry.
And then they also do that for whenever you do the multi-crew stuff, which I think is
bad.
Not real great. I think it's like you should. I mean, I see why they did it because it's a concession to fun, but it's like, okay, I'm going to teleport my friend here, but they're actually just like a hologram, and then they can operate in the ship and pretend to sit in a seat. But it's just like, okay.
But yeah, I agree with the telepresence of the pilot. Initially, when I was thinking about the technical lore in my game, I really struggled between, do I want to put the pilot in the ship, or do I want to invent a new technology that allow the pilot to be safe on a carrier that can because in the end we know that that's what's going to be the case in the real space war whenever we reach that level of technology.
Yeah,
we are not going to send people. Yeah, even nowadays, fighter pilots are going the way of the dodo.
Sorry, responding to the chat. Sorry, I think what you're saying is it makes sense, and having a good mix, having like, the laser weapon, the beam weapons, it's because I enjoy shooting all of those things, you know.
Well, it's the Star Trek and Star Wars convention, right? It's much more exciting to see a big pew pew laser, right? Because hey, space, right? Star Wars is so responsible. Well, we wouldn't have the genre if it wasn't for Star Wars, right? So I think in a way, every single Starfighter game has got to like pay respect to the X-wing, and in some way, right? And then because it's gonna get a comparison, it just absolutely will.
It's true.
And you know what? That's what people expect. That's what people want. So it's kind of a thing of like, you can deviate from that to make it different, a little more interesting or whatever. But I think the core experience still has to be rooted firmly in X-Wing, Wing Commander kind of, because Wing Commander was trying to be X-Wing. He just couldn't get the license. Right. You know that story. So, everything comes back to X-Wing in the end. And, the stuff that deviated from that too hard, you end up with stuff like Manus, which I think has its own merits, right? But it was one that tried to just go full on Newtonian physics, right? And nobody was receptive to that because it was way too different.
Sorry, I hate that game. I hate that game.
Yeah.
I hate that fucking game.
But it's like whenever I was trying to play like Frontier, right? Frontier First Encounters, that is also not a turn and burn game. And what I found out in playing that thing, like many years later, whenever I went back to it, and if you play Pioneer Scout, you get the exact same experience. If you get in a dogfight with another ship and you just head at them full engines and they come at you, then you end up jousting. So you'll just blast past each other and then have to turn around and close the gap again over and over and over. Well, if you just don't do that, if you're actually a little bit cautious with the throttle, you can actually turn it into like a chase fight instead of a bunch of jousting. But the normal player, their reaction, because of how you do everything in any other games, right, is like step on the gas, point it toward the enemy, squeeze the trigger, and then you realize like, oh shit, now I'm like 10 miles past him. because
Okay.
you
Whoops.
you get a series of head-on passes,
Right.
and that doesn't win fights. But if you're actually if you think about the throttle a little bit and maneuvering, and you have to think in advance with the maneuvering, right? So, and you just don't want too high of a closure rate, because if you have a super huge closure rate, then you know you're gone.
Right.
But then if you have a low closure rate, you have a prolonged nose to nose initially, where he's going to be shooting you for a long time. So
Right.
can you deal with that? I don't know. And if you try to maneuver around that, then you're taking your guns off the enemy, and you're letting him shoot you in the side for free. So that's sort of a thing that's like very counter to everything that you would think to do, but it actually works. So you just got to have enough shields to deal with it.
Hmm. Well, it sounds like we got to wrap up. Raj, did we cover all the things you wanted to talk about? Did you get some ideas and whatnot?
Yes and no.
I mean, it's a
It's
big
still
topic. It's a big topic.
yes.
We might have to do we'd have to
Hey,
do another show on it. It's a huge topic, and I kind of think we only scratched the surface of it. And
totally.
we've been going for almost 2 hours, so I think it might be good to think on it a bit and circle back in maybe a couple of months. Like maybe when you're
Well, I think the question really is, I mean, this is a survey of us, of
mm-hmm,
like what did we think was important across a very wide variety
mm-hmm,
of things.
yeah,
But to you though, because you're making a game,
mm-hmm.
what do you want your game to feel like?
That's a good
What,
question.
whether it's popular or not, or whatever, what's your vision for what you want the experience to be? Because that kind of informs, it's like we start there and then we bend it to where people will be able to deal with it, not the other way around, I think.
It's a bit. Uh, it's a bit of both. I mean, the main point that I want is a game that feels tense and exciting.
Mm.
Sure.
I mean, basically, I would love to be able. Well, I mean, it's a little bit presumptuous to say that, but I would love to be able to do something like what the new Doom did to the franchise. It's just to rebuild something using modern technology and getting the same old feeling, but
Just include better
without.
multiplayer.
Yes, e- excuse me. Sorry. Rebuild the franchise and sorry, I'm losing my words. And making the game
Okay.
exciting like they were at the time, but without using the nostalgia factor.
Mm.
I
So
don't
you
want the
so you
games to be good
modernize
because
it.
of the nostalgia, not because of the nostalgia, but exactly because of how they feel.
No,
Well,
that's fair.
The new Doom definitely did a really good job from a single player standpoint. Like it was truly a great game that stood on its own, that was built upon an established franchise, and it holds its own, I think, in the realm of the Doom series. What was nice was they didn't have to do this to make it good, but they did, just for the fans' sake. Was there's tons of little Easter eggs and hidden secrets that you could find
Yeah, I mean they
that
indulged the
added
nostalgia.
that added the nostalgia, but it wasn't like what made the game
Yes,
good.
that's
Well,
exactly that.
I think the reason that Doom was perceived as a unique game, it's the same gameplay from 20 years ago, but we have abandoned that in the industry. And to go back to it, people are like, "Oh yeah, now I remember this was good.
And
Why
that's
hasn't why
about
haven't
exactly
games
the
done
same.
this for a long time?"
And that's about exactly the same state that we are in the dogfighting space game.
Right. So
Well,
I would say you can't lose if you model it after X-wing. You just absolutely cannot lose. But if you want something that's a little more realistic than that, uh, you can do some like with what Diaspora did. I think personally, the best thing that you could do is play through Diaspora and just kind of study that flight model and like what makes it good and you know how you could improve on that. But I think that's your baseline experience, because it took what was already good in Freespace and perfected it, at
I
least
will
to
say,
my liking.
because I'm not sure. I think I posted the link in the chat a few months ago, because what I am really trying to go for is, as a bit as I said that earlier, is some kind of car race in space. I mean, transform the dogfight into something that feels like a car,
Mhm.
and get that feeling of intuitivity. The guy should be able to take the commands and feel like he knows how to fly the thing.
Okay. So I think to that end, the way that I would go about that is I would do it with throttle management, right?
Exactly.
And
Yes.
and if you have energy management, so up to a certain amount of acceleration or velocity that that your ship has, the ship's compensation will make it fly like an airplane. And then if you exceed that, like let's say like up to half throttle, it's going to fly perfectly right where you point it. If you exceed that up to full throttle, then you're going to start the, like the drifting turns and things.
Yes.
And then if you like double down, like if like Wing Commander, if you hit the afterburners, then you've got a wild rocket at that point, because you're going to just go wherever the nose is pointed. And and also slowing down from that, because those games, they pretty much immediately slowed you back down to normal speed. But the thing about afterburners like that, if you have that much acceleration, it doesn't just go away on its own. You have to stop. But you have to slow back down. So also, if you're leaving the fight, if you want to leave, you want to continue to go the way that you're going at that speed. So I would shut my compensators off at that point and just maintain that afterburnt speed. But that kind of breaks gameplay,
Yeah,
because they'll
and
never
exactly.
catch you.
Exactly. It's not really good, because right now I am working on kind of the technology of the ships that I am going to use is based on the EM drive
Yeah.
that is theorized to exist. I
Yep.
just added a literal twist to this theory. By making it rotate, it generates some kind of field that making actually drill through space, if you wish.
Mm-hmm.
So that gives you friction, and so that gives you the ability to drift. And as a kind of bonus, I I devised a system that cannot have any magnetic field inside the ship. So you cannot have conventional generators, because they are basically magnets running inside
Mm.
of a coil. So you have to use internal combustion engines in space to make it turn.
Oh, that's actually really interesting. The other thing that's going to screw up, right, is radar, like your
Yes,
sensors and stuff. You're not going to have conventional radar and stuff.
exactly.
But another thing that you could get into there would be, because of the nature of that, it might be hard to get a lock on somebody from a great distance, because it's just going to disrupt it too much. So you might have to get close into dogfight range, more like a Star Wars kind of thing, to hit the guy. Otherwise, your weapons just wouldn't track
Yes,
anyway.
because that's something that I am very sure that I will not have any kind of aim assist. It will all be in a straight line shooting without any gimbal.
Okay, because I remember vaguely in the Mobile Suit Gundam anime, they had some
The Saphir
concession.
particles,
Yeah,
no, Minkow's
Minovsky.
particles, Minovsky particles,
Yeah,
yes.
and that's why they couldn't hit each other with missiles from a
And that's
thousand
why they
miles
had to
away.
develop the mobile
Right.
armor suit.
Yep. So I think maybe your drive could act as something like that, where you could shoot missiles at somebody, but they're going to have a hard time tracking, as opposed to modern missiles, which are pretty damn flawless unless you actually
Yes.
outmaneuver it.
And that's
Um,
actually allows gameplay, because if you try to be too realistic, you are forced to admit that, hey, the weapons are smarter than humans, and they will hit every time.
yep. Yeah,
That's,
so that gives a reason to put the guns back in human hands, because yeah, it's like computers can help predict or whatever, but if the computer can't perceive it like your eyes can, then it's back to the humans again.
Right.
because I basically managed to get a nearly analogic spacecraft. It only has a nuclear reactor on board that transforms the thermal energy of the reactor to electricity via something called the thermoionic effect. It's a nice thing that you put two plates of metal, one hot plate, one cold plate, and you leave a very little gap between them. And the hot plate will have electrons that will jump to the other plate, and that will create current without having to use turbines or movement.
It almost sounds a little bit steampunk. And
That's the
I like
point.
that.
I want to
Nice.
have a steampunk feeling and a car enthusiast feeling, some kind of a mix inside.
That sounds
So
pretty awesome.
I have a lot of dance on that front. And right now I am going into the meat of. I actually build the game and rebuild the game about 3 times now, because every time I change technology, that's another issue. But I have worked on the game for nearly 1.5 years now, and
Do,
I am hoping.
do you have a YouTube video or something up of a build?
No, right now I'm not showing anything.
Okay.
I am too ashamed of the aesthetics. Because that's something where I'm not very strong. I have a strong technical background, and I know I will have a
Right.
good game feeling in the end, and I still have to nail down the aesthetics.
Well, yeah, but it's programmer art at this point. Right?
Yes, exactly. So I'm
When
not showing any of that.
when do you think we'll be able to get our mitts on it? When do you think we'll be able to play it? Like next year? Later this year?
That's kind of the issue, because I have the luxury to not have to worry about money at the moment.
No, nice.
So
That must be great. Wonder what
I
that's
don't
like.
have. Oh yes, it is great. After 10 years of, I started my career very early when I was 20 years old,
Oh,
and I immediately went into corporate software,
nice.
and I spent 15 years working in that domain, and I burned out in the end. And now I am going for my passion project, actually. And
Good.
initially it was supposed to be only VR and small VR games, the exact kind of shitty stuff that we said before.
Right,
So
right.
I very early realized that this wasn't going to be worth it, economically speaking. And it is playing Elite and Valkyrie in VR that told me there is still room in this market. There is still people in the Valkyrie community are not happy. People in the Elite community are not happy. There is somewhere in the middle a spot for a new game, a
Yeah,
new
there
franchise.
totally is. That's what we talked about last week, is that there aren't nearly enough first-person space sims as there should be. I mean, we're all glad the space genre is basically back, but there needs to be more TIE Fighter and Freespace clones. So I'm glad to hear you're working on one. And
Less for Rex.
and I can't wait to play it. But take your time, do it right. No rush. No rush. We're patient. Well, at least we are. Because there's so much else to. Oh my God, there's 4 big games coming out in May, you guys. Next month. Jesus. When do we got the time? Oh my God. Anyway.
I'm watching an Eve Valkyrie video right now.
Mm-hmm.
This looks like it would feel a lot like House of the Flying Nun. Seriously.
You gotta stop calling it that. Anyway.
No, I'm gonna do it forever, because he took a great
pretty
name
much-
and then changed it.
I did like Enemy Starfighter more. I'll tell you,
Yeah.
It's a little more generic, but it's just so on point. Anyway,
Yeah, but I'm looking at this, and because like he was saying about, you squeeze one trigger to speed up, and the other trigger to brake, and Flying Sun does exactly that.
it really does. Yeah.
Yeah. The game that we didn't mention all night
What?
is Stripe Suit Zero.
Oh, There's a reason we didn't mention it. There's a reason. Because it's not very good.
Yeah, but
it's not good.
Turn into a robot.
Yeah, and then you kind of sit there and you become a turret. You don't really move much. You strafe a little bit.
That's Robotech, basically.
Yeah.
Basically,
it is.
Turn into a robot, launch 1,000 missiles,
and then turn back into a plane. It wasn't fun.
That's
it
exactly
really wasn't
Robotech.
fun.
The concept was good.
The concept
the
is good.
execution was terrible.
Yes, you need something. The robot part should not be in the vacuum of space. You should have a reason, for instance, to land on an asteroid or on a space Hulk, and then move around using the legs and the mobility that you can have with a bipedal robot.
That's a good
and
point.
then you can maybe build something around that. I
Yeah,
am also
they're doing this ground attack mission that you were talking about, and this reminds me that other game that just doesn't make any sense to me, Dreadnought, where it's just like, okay, we're going to make it interesting because it's going to be spaceships, but they're going to fly among canyons on a planet, and it's like, okay, I don't know. I think Fractured Space is the better game in that case, but that's just a weirdness, like the whole let's put spaceships on a planet. That's a genre unto itself that makes no sense. But you know what did it kind of interestingly?
What's that?
What was that game? Was it Slipstream? Or
Slipstream?
There were games from the early 2000s.
The racing?
No, not the racing game. There is I have it. No, I have it in Steam. Let me look.
Well, while you're looking that up, let's start wrapping up. Raj, I want to thank you for taking the time to come on. It's like the middle of the night where you are, so we really appreciate
It's not a problem. I have a free. I am free of my hours.
That must be nice. But we
it is.
We appreciate you coming on. Basically, it's like what 3-4 in the morning right now, your time.
4.5.
Oh my god!
But I woke up at 20, so it's okay.
Okay. But yeah, we appreciate you, and we definitely want to talk about your game once, whatever it's going to be called, once you're ready to show it. Folks, we got a busy week coming up this week. First, besides this podcast, we are going to be playing some Worms Armageddon on Thursday by Hunter's request. That's very exciting because I don't know who else you're going to talk to, but Worms Armageddon is pretty much the best game of the series. Really. They're all great in their own way. Well, most of them are. But Armageddon is really the pinnacle. So I'm excited about that because I don't know if you all have ever played Worms, but if you have and you haven't played it multiplayer, it's probably one of the best multiplayer experiences online or in the same room that you can find. It's so fun. So
yeah, Echelon, what it was.
Oh, Echelon, yes, the ground-based one,
which is 79 cents right now.
And Wind Warriors.
Huh.
Yeah, those are pretty fun. Not great.
It was like a weird Eastern European thing.
Back when Eastern Europeans were giving us all the games about this. Sunday, we're having our next monthly MMO meetup at 9 a.m. Pacific time. And we're going to be playing Discovery Freelancer, which is a mod / total conversion for Freelancer
right now.
Yeah, we're spooling up our own server.
What?
Yeah, I've got the.
We'll talk later.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it's not the official server that we're going to have, but this is the test. I'm figuring out how I'm going to manage this.
We're working on our own server that should be up by Sunday. Hunter and Jim are making that happen. Thank you guys for that. So that's going to be fun. There'll be links to all that in the show notes. There's links to that on the site, on the calendar and on the blog posts, by the way. And next week on the show, we're going to be talking mods. We're going to have the creator of the really fantastic looking Freespace 2 total conversion mod, Between the Ashes, which I've only played a mission or two of. It's fantastic. That's next week's game of the week too. So that's coming up next week on the show. So a lot of good stuff coming up. And finally, we're still running that iTunes review contest for probably another week or two, where if you want to review our podcast on iTunes and take a screenshot of it and send it to us, we will put you in a drawing for a free game /games. I've got a lot of keys just sitting around waiting to be given away. So yeah, please please head over to iTunes and give us a review, because that gives us more visibility if you do that. So everybody wins. So we're still going to be running that for a little while. So yeah. And also it seems we had less technical issues with the internet this week. That's because I turned off everything. So I think I'm just going to do that from now on. I turned off Steam. I turned off Galaxy. I turned off a bunch of crap. And I also didn't have a Restream going in the background. So I think that worked. So I think that's what we're going to be doing from now on. But yeah, thank you everyone for watching and listening. This is a really good topic, and we need to revisit it, because I think, like I said, we only hit the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more we could talk about. But yeah, thank you everyone for watching and listening. Jim, Eric, Hunter, and Raj, thank you for being on and talking, and we'll see you next time. Have a good one,
Pleasure is
folks.
mine.
And ours too. Good night.